Revolts and Resistance during the Holocaust. The Holocaust is regarded as one of the most horrifying acts of mass murder. During the period of 1941 to 1945, more than 6 million European Jews, as well as members of other persecuted groups, were murdered at killing centers and concentration camps. However, not all Jewish prisoners went without a fight. Many chose to fight against their captors in order to win their freedom. This began in ghettos, which were slums where Jews were forced to live. Ghettos were originally set up by the Nazi Party to segregate Jews from the rest of the population. They were designed to be temporary, however, people sometimes lived in them for years. The majority of ghetto inhabitants died from disease, starvation, were killed by German soldiers, or sent to killing centers or concentration camps. Ghettos were cramped and disease ran rampant because of tight living spaces. One survivor described ghettos by saying, "Every day children became orphaned and many had to take care of even younger children. Orphans often lived in the streets, begging for bits of bread from others who had little or nothing to share. Many froze to death in the winter." Quote from Life in the Ghettos. The resistance in Warsaw was one of the first of the Jewish resistances in ghettos other than Vilnius. It had by far the most influence on the Jewish resistance effort. Like many ghettos, the leader of the Warsaw Resistance created an underground army that sought to disrupt German efforts. They also created periodicals through the use of an illegal printing press. These periodicals were spread to other ghettos and used to rally the Jews to fight back against their German oppressors. The group tracked down Jewish doctors inside the ghettos and convinced them to care for the dying and sick Jews. Jewish physicians became, in effect, professional rule breakers as well as providers of medical care, misstating medical facts on forms, concealing patients so they could escape deportation, and improperly maintaining contacts outside the ghetto. Quote from Morris. The resistance in Warsaw created escape networks that spanned across Europe. These networks carried out dangerous tasks from hiding children to smuggling people across borders. The revolts in Warsaw spread and created more disruption in ghettos through their use of periodicals. The distribution of periodicals made the resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto important to the overall survival of Jews in the ghettos.
And they formed the so-called Fighters Organization. And this was in 1942. The deportation started the 22nd of July, 1942. And then representatives of youth organizations got together and something has to be done. And really, I would say, in October 1942, the organization came to life. An understanding came that some actions in preparing the youth, if another deportation starts, that a response should be in an organized way. We didn't have any arms. I belonged to the first group of the so-called Fighters Organization. We didn't have any arms at that time. It was a need to get armed. It was a need to prepare ourselves. And in December 1942, they turned to me, it was the Bundesjud group, that because I look like a Polish girl, there are a few others on the other side of the wall, on the other side of the ghetto wall, to get out and to walk in the underground on the Polish side, to try to prepare to buy on the black market guns, whatever it's possible, and also to prepare some hiding places for children, if it's possible there, to find out. And this is how I got out of the ghetto.
Most of the resistance to German occupation now came from segments of the Jewish population in the ghetto. In fact, the idea of resistance within the ghettos was born in the Vilnius ghetto. Vilnius became a center of Jewish resistance from where it spread to other ghettos such as those in Białystok, and Warsaw. Vilnius was known as the Jerusalem of Lithuania and was the Jewish center of cultural life. The group that formed in Vilnius as a resistance to the German power was known as the United Partisans Organization. This organization consisted of 300 underground fighters consisting of 2 battalions. Plans included escaping to nearby forests and damaging German infrastructure. Their first leader was Yitzhak Wittenberg. Under his rule, he successfully organized countless attacks against the gates leading into the ghetto and many escape attempts. Out of 57,000 Jews that were located in the Vilnius ghetto, the group single-handedly saved 3,000 Jews through the use of violence and smuggling. After the ghetto was dissolved, many of the members of the FPO continued their work in killing centers and concentration camps, bringing the resistance to a new front for the Jews. Yitzhak Wittenberg was the first commander of the United Partisan Organization, a Jewish resistance organization in the Vilnius ghetto. Yitzhak was a communist activist who became the leader of the underground army that occupied the ghetto. He was the obvious choice to lead the group because of his personal qualities, his underground experience, and his communist contacts inside the ghetto. He was also well liked by his soldiers. Quote from Shoah: Yitzhak was the first of his kind when it came to resistance in ghettos and caused many Jewish prisoners to follow in his footsteps. Yitzhak survived until the end of the after escaping the ghetto during a group attempt. The ghettos that the Jewish population had to live through were nothing compared to the conditions of the concentration camps. The disease and plagues in the ghettos also made their way to the camps because of the dirtiness of the living spaces. Prisoners slept on straw mattresses filled with bugs and other creatures. The barracks swarmed with various sorts of vermin and rats. A constant shortage of water for washing and the lack of suitable sanitary facilities aggravated the situation. Quote from Jewish Virtual Library: Many Jewish prisoners died due to these poor conditions. Sabor was one of the few concentration camps that almost exactly followed the revolts of the ghetto. With the help of Alexander Perchetsky as their leader, an underground army of prisoners formed. This army included a pharmacist who snuck in drugs through the use of a friendly Nazi guard and a Jewish medic. Through the use of children, they stole extra food for the group. Children were used because they would receive a lesser punishment if caught. After several attempts, the group of underground prisoners escaped with the help of a new group of POWs on the eve of October 14, 1943. After this attempt, the camp was shut down due to the failures of the guards. Alexander Perchetsky was the leader of the revolt inside of Sabor. Alexander had previously been part of the army, but was taken prisoner in October 1941. After an escape attempt, he was transferred to Sabor. 1 week after arriving at the camp, he was already thinking of escape. He devised a plan to dig a hole to avoid the mines. He also instructed his men to create weapons made out of rusty knives and razor blades. On the eve of October 14th, Alexander and 57 Jewish prisoners escaped. After the prisoners split up, Alexander found a young man who gave him directions to a unit of partisans of the Voroshival detachment. After 8 days of being on the run, Alexander was safe from German occupation. Treblinka was a killing center that had mass amounts of Jews arriving every day and mass amounts of Jews dying. Jewish prisoners inside of Treblinka were some of the most desperate prisoners of the Holocaust because they knew they did not have long to live. In 1943, inmates organized a group when the camp operations were nearing an end. The prisoners feared they would be killed. Prisoners seized weapons from the camp armory but were discovered before they could take over the camp. Over 750 prisoners stormed the main gate of the camp under machine gun fire. More than 300 escaped, but 2/3 of them were reclaimed by German soldiers.